The radical act of disappearing. Why Jung said you must vanish to be reborn. We live in an era where disappearing seems like a crime. Modern society idolizes visibility, being available, accessible, responding quickly, showing your routine, sharing every achievement, every thought, every step. Social media has turned introspection into suspicion and silence into an unforgivable absence. To be seen is to be validated. But what if constant exposure is slowly killing the possibility of you becoming who you were truly meant to be? Carl Jung, one of the greatest architects of the human psyche, believed that true transformation does not happen under the eyes of others. It requires withdrawal. It requires disappearance, not as a cowardly escape, but as a radical act of reconstruction. Jung called this conscious descent, a deliberate dive away from performance, from others' expectations, from distractions. For him, the patients who achieved the deepest transformations were precisely those who dared to vanish, those who cancelled commitments, withdrew from social media, and entered a state of sacred unavailability. And there, far from external demands, they found something they would never find in the noise, their own essence. The truth is that you cannot become someone new while everyone still treats you as who you were. Your constant presence in the world, physical or digital, is like an anchor pulling you back. Every notification, every message, every casual interaction reaffirms your old identity. And when you are trying to become your best version, this constant reaffirmation is a silent saboteur. In this video, we will deeply explore Jung's thesis on strategic disappearance. We will understand why vanishing, even temporarily, can be the most powerful act of your life. And more than that, I will show you how to do it practically. You will discover the 4 pillars of intentional disappearance: radical sovereignty, eliminating passive consumption, building reconstruction routines, and the transformation journal. You won't hear self-help phrases or easy solutions here. You will hear truths. You will receive a path. And if you have enough courage to follow it, you will not only disappear, you will be reborn. The invisible prison of visibility. The greatest prison of the 21st century has no bars, walls, or locks. It is made of notifications, invitations, mentions, and likes. It is an invisible but relentless prison built by the demand to always be present, at work, on social media, in groups. The logic is clear: if you don't show up, you don't exist. But Jung realized what few dared to admit. This constant visibility is destroying the possibility of deep transformation. Uninterrupted social presence condemns us to live under the reflection of who we were, never of who we are becoming. Every time you interact with someone, that person treats you based on the old version they know. Even if you are already in transition, even if inside you are trying to change, there is no space for the new when everyone around you continues to reinforce the old. It's like trying to swim against a current of others' expectations. This phenomenon is subtle but devastating. You respond to a message from someone who has known you since childhood and immediately feel the pressure to be that same insecure teenager. You go to a social event and almost automatically activate the same behavior patterns, the same jokes, the same roles. Nothing changes because you are surrounded by mirrors that only reflect what has already been. Jung knew that the human psyche is highly suggestible. When we are constantly immersed in environments that define us by the past, the chance of emerging as a new version decreases drastically. That's why he observed in his clinical practice that the patients who evolved the most were those who interrupted the cycle of visibility. They withdrew. They disappeared. And in that disappearance, they created enough psychological space to rebuild themselves. You might even think you are evolving, reading books, listening to podcasts. But if every day you are forced to perform the same identity for others, your internal progress will always be compromised. It's like planting a seed and digging the soil every hour to see if it has grown. Disappearing, even for a time, is an act of liberation. It is refusing the social role that has been imposed on you to discover who you are without an audience, without applause, without external expectations. It is silencing the noise of the world to finally hear your own voice. But this disappearance needs to be done strategically, with intention, method, and discipline. It is not enough just to hide. It is necessary to rebuild. And that is exactly what we will explore in the next part. The conscious descent into the psychic underworld. Few people understand what it really means to isolate oneself. Most see isolation as a cowardly escape or a sign of weakness. But Jung viewed it from another angle, as a psychological rite of passage. He called this movement conscious descent and considered it one of the most fundamental steps toward true transformation. The conscious descent is not simply about doing a weekend detox. It is a radical and intentional decision to break for a period with social roles, public performance, and constant distraction, and to dive into a space where the true self can finally emerge without judgment, without an audience, without filters. Jung lived this experience himself. After his break with Freud, he withdrew from everything. Instead of seeking answers from others, he built his tower in Bollingen on the shores of Lake Zurich. And there he began a profound process of self-exploration. For years isolated, Jung drew mandalas, wrote in his journal, and reflected. While the world tried to understand his silence, he was in a process of reconstruction. This period was not romantic. It was dense, turbulent, disorienting. The silence of isolation is not comfortable. It exposes. By disconnecting from external distractions, you are inevitably confronted with what is inside you. Your anxieties have nowhere left to hide. Your repressed desires scream. Your contradictions emerge like ghosts. And it is precisely here that the real work begins. The conscious descent is a kind of underworld of the psyche. It is as if you are exploring a dark cave with a torch in hand, trying to understand what lies in the depths of your being. And this journey can be frightening, because you will encounter parts of yourself that you have rejected for years. Fears, traumas, masks, the shadow. But it is in this underground that your power resides. Jung asserted that all individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, begins with this initial rupture with the outside world. To be reborn, one must symbolically die. And this death is the strategic disappearance. It is to cease to exist as others know you, to discover who you really are without the layers that were built to please, to fit in, to survive. But it is not enough to disappear. Disappearing without direction can lead to alienation. Isolation needs structure, intention, practice. Jung did not retreat into inertia. He created an environment where he could do the necessary internal work. He built a space of action, not passivity. Effective disappearance is not the end of movement. It is the beginning of a new construction. The 4 pillars of strategic disappearance. True disappearance is strategic. It is meticulous. It is almost an internal engineering project. Jung advocated for the construction of a psychic fortress where the individual could rebuild themselves without external interference. And this reconstruction requires structure. It requires pillars. Here are the 4 pillars of strategic disappearance. Practical, transformative actions that allow you to use isolation as a furnace for self-transformation. It is not just about stepping out of the spotlight. It is about what you do while the lights are off. Pillar 1. Sovereign unavailability. The first break is with your availability. You need to cut the compulsive connection to the external world. This means turning off notifications, establishing periods when you are absolutely unreachable, and stopping the justification of your absence. You do not owe satisfaction about your time. This is the beginning of personal sovereignty. When you limit the access others have to you, something powerful happens. You regain your attention, your energy, your focus, and more importantly, you begin to reverse the logic that conditioned you to be a social character 24 hours a day. Pillar 2. Elimination of passive consumption. The second measure is to attack what keeps you reactive: news, social media, short videos, excessive entertainment. All of this feeds your mind with noise and fragments your attention. Jung knew that the mind needs silence to metabolize the unconscious. If you are constantly consuming, you are distancing yourself from your own internal creation. Here the goal is to replace passivity with production. Write, create, develop something. Transform the time previously occupied by distraction into time for expression. Stop being a spectator and become the protagonist. Pillar 3. Creation of reconstruction routines. Now that you have silenced the world and ceased useless consumption, the third pillar is to establish routines that solidify your new identity. This includes practices such as deep reading, reflective writing, intense physical exercise, learning new skills, and working on projects with real meaning. Jung deeply valued the connection between body and psyche and knew that concrete action reinforces internal movement. Here you rebuild your discipline, your clarity, and your strength. With each repetition, you reaffirm your commitment to your new version. Pillar 4. The Transformation Journal. The last pillar is the documentation of your rebirth. Not for others, for you. A journal where you write every day not about what happened, but about who you are becoming. This journal is your internal mirror, your psychological laboratory, your map. It is where you recognize old patterns and celebrate the emergence of new behaviors. Writing is anchoring the invisible into the visible. It is giving shape to what is still in gestation within you. These 4 pillars are not loose ideas. They are concrete practices that Jung used to rebuild himself. They represent a direct but not comfortable path to individuation. It requires discipline, courage, and above all, brutal honesty with who you are, and with who you are not yet. The final test, the pain of silence. There is a moment in strategic disappearance when everything goes quiet. The noise of the networks fades away. Messages stop coming in, and the world, which once seemed so urgent, becomes distant, almost irrelevant. For many, this silence feels liberating, but it is in fact the true test, because it is precisely in this silence that what you have tried to avoid your whole life finally appears: yourself. The pain of silence is not physical, it is psychic. It settles in like an unease that you cannot name. In the first days of isolation, your mind will try to sabotage you with distractions. Go back to Instagram for just a minute. Open YouTube. You deserve a break. But with discipline, if you resist, this fog begins to dissipate. And that's when the true voices emerge. The human mind, when not anesthetized by the continuous flow of stimuli, begins to project outward what has been stored in the basement of consciousness. And what was there? Old fears, regrets, unresolved anger, abandoned dreams, parts of yourself that were silenced to fit into the molds of what others expected of you. Jung spoke about this with brutal clarity. The process of individuation begins when the ego is confronted with the unconscious. And this confrontation often occurs through psychic suffering, not because you are broken, but because for the first time you are in contact with parts of yourself that were repressed. Silence exposes, silence lays bare. It does not forgive, but it is in this moment, when everything feels uncomfortable, strange, chaotic, that you begin to see more clearly. You realize how much you lived reacting to the world rather than creating your life. How much your decisions were based on the need for approval, the fear of rejection, the maintenance of an image that never represented your essence. In the silence, you perceive the theater. And here is the truth. This discomfort is necessary. It is a sign that the masks are beginning to fall. Jung understood that there is no light without first facing the darkness. The pain of silence is the womb of transformation. It is where the new identity begins to form. It is in discomfort that old patterns begin to crumble. It is in solitude that clarity blossoms. The work is not over. It is now that the true transformation begins, because it is not enough to deconstruct. It is necessary to reconstruct a new identity, a version of yourself that was not born to please, but to exist with wholeness. And this rebirth does not happen publicly. It happens in the dark, in silence, like everything that is sacred. The revelation of reappearance. After weeks or months of strategic disappearance, disciplined silence, and deep internal work, the moment to reappear arrives, to return to social life, to the world. But here lies the irony. When done correctly, the reappearance is never a return to who you were. It is an emergence, a revelation, a psychological reincarnation. People look at you, but they do not recognize you. They cannot explain what has changed. Your face is the same. Your voice is the same. But there is something there that disturbs, a kind of presence, clarity, firmness that did not exist before. And this unsettles them, because they expected to find the you they always knew. The one who accepted everything, who fit in, who followed the rules of the invisible game. But now before them stands someone who no longer needs external validation, someone who no longer molds themselves to others' projections, someone who has been forged in the fire of silence. The return is almost an anticlimax for the external world. While everyone was concerned with maintaining appearances, you were digging deep. You did not return to be noticed. You returned to live authentically. And for that reason, your mere presence becomes uncomfortable for those still trapped in false versions of themselves. Jung saw this transformation as an inevitability of the individuation process. He said that the true self can only emerge when the ego is restructured, when superficial identifications are undone. When this happens, the subject ceases to be reactive. They become a creator of their own path. They are no longer driven by the world. They guide their experience within it. The most interesting thing is that upon returning, you do not need to prove anything to anyone. There is no need to explain where you have been. The result is in the gaze, in the posture, in the choices, in the silent firmness with which you refuse to lower yourself to old patterns. You have ceased to be a mirror for others, and now they can no longer see themselves in you. This new you is a hybrid being between the old and the reborn, a being that has integrated the shadows, that has learned to be alone, that has faced their own demons and returned with wisdom. And now, in place of the anxiety for belonging, there is peace. In place of the fear of rejection, integrity. In place of performance, presence. Freedom, the treasure of the cave. Disappearing from the world for a while is not a simple choice. It is an act of courage. It is the modern equivalent of entering the dark cave you fear the most. And as Joseph Campbell said, that is where you will find the treasure you seek. Strategic disappearance is not just a pause, it is an alchemical process. You enter as a fragmented, conditioned person, lost in others' expectations, and emerge as a whole, lucid individual aware of your own power. What few understand is that true freedom is not doing whatever you want. True freedom is no longer being a hostage to what others think about who you are. It is living in alignment with what pulses within you, even if the world does not applaud. Because when you become your best version, you start to live based on principles, not impulses, with direction, not distraction, with presence, not performance. And this version of you, forged in silence, shaped by discipline, sustained by internal practices, is invincible. It does not live to please. It does not need to prove anything. It simply is. And this being is magnetic, authentic, transformative. You become a presence that inspires not because you try, but because you exist with real depth. Strategic disappearance, therefore, is not an end. It is the beginning of a new life, a life in which you do not just survive. You build, create, lead, serve, live with purpose. The world around you will remain the same, but the way you inhabit it will be completely different, and that changes everything. If you are in that place now, remember this: you are not running away. You are going inward. You are not being antisocial. You are being profoundly true to yourself. Your transformation is just beginning. The highest calling is to become what you truly are: conscious, whole, and sovereign.